So thank you for being in time. We have now 20 minutes for questions. Are there questions in the auditorium? Yeah.
Do you hear me? Yes. I see now we are trying to find a solution on for therapy, for diagnosis on nanomedicine. And when I read the new MDR, I see that we have to label when we have nanotechnology in our future medical device. It seems that it's a negative. It's like the same level of phthalate, presence of phthalate or radioactivity. I have the fear that when in the future the patients see in the bottle, oh, presence of nanoparticles is a negative, what they say, negative pictures. I would like to have your opinion on that. And also, for example, if we manufacture a medical device and the intention is not to use nanoparticles, and because of this new regulation, because of this new definition, we see that there's particles below of 100 nanometers. We have to label, we have presence of nanoparticles, but we don't use in the sense to make a therapy or diagnosis. What is the barrier?
Okay, I think that is a question for either Marisa or for Robert in the auditorium, medical devices, new regulation.
Let's start with the second question. If you have nanoparticles in a product, which you do not intend to use as the treatment, but they are there, you have to see whether they are process-related impurities or product-related impurities. And anyway, you have to do as much as you can and as is required to reduce the level of those impurities to the minimum, to a level which is not creating damage to the patients. So, I mean, nanotechnology, either you use it on purpose to design a molecule or to design a system, but if you find nanoparticles so that you can detect easily the presence of nanoparticles in a product which is not intended to be exploiting the properties, you should eliminate and reduce as much as possible, be product-related or process-related. This for the second question. For the first question about the perception, perception is guided by rumor. People capture bad news. The bad news is always a news. The press, everyone. So until we really become able to communicate the benefit and the benefit risk, and we continue to think about the risk, this perception will not change. And maybe we are so ahead now with this perception that we might have to change the language we use when we speak about product which obtained with nanotechnology tools. It reminds me when we started with the recombinant DNA. I was very young at the time, and people were accusing us, researchers, I was very, very young, that we want to be God, we want to change nature, we want to change the function of the cells, the function of the bacteria. So there was a lot of bad publicity. So the DNA recombinant, in particular RH DNA recombinant, was really seen as an attempt to pervert nature. But then the benefit and the possibility came across, and we managed to master the risks, because the risk is always there. So I think we might have to think analogies with the world of nanotechnology applied to health products for the future, to remove this perception. But perception with innovation, fear with innovation is like you cannot avoid it. You have just to manage it.
Any addition, Robert?
Yeah. Just to avoid misunderstandings, I think your first question was saying that you had to label that the device contained nano. That is not a fact. there is no requirement for labeling nano in the medical device regulation. So there used to be one in the early version, in the early proposal, but during the negotiations that has disappeared. So there is, of course, still the requirement in one of the essential requirements that you have to evaluate safety. So I have it in front of me. It's a devices shall be designed and manufactured in such a way as to reduce as far as possible the risks linked to the size and properties of particles, which are or can be released into the patient or the user's body, unless they come into contact with skin only, and special attention shall be given to nanomaterials. That's a requirement that's new. And of course, there's also the classification rule that depending on the potential for exposure, you may end up in a different risk class, so you might have a different conformity assessment route. But the labeling is not a requirement, not like the phthalates where there is a requirement for labeling.
Yeah, I mentioned the labeling because I saw some draft of symbols saying that the presence of nanoparticles is why I mentioned in this direction. In the future, and we'll see. I mean, also there is some delegated acts. We will we'll see how they will update these parts. Yeah.
Beat?
We have, in the last 2 days, had several opinions regarding the term of nanomedicine. On one hand, it was discussed as an enabling technology, and I wonder, from your view, how long is nanomedicine in the range of cutting-edge medicine going to be nanomedicine, or will this change? And the second question, is it to be counted on that the regulatory framework for non-nano drugs and nano drugs is the same at the end?
Frank, Marisa, Kumiko, I think we had just this discussion in our closed session, so I think who will start?
We had the opportunity to discuss that just a little short while ago. But I think it's a question in terms of utility. I think a new terminology can bring a field forward when it unites critical minds and a critical mass of science, and when it facilitates in our society particular things that otherwise would not move. So I believe in such context one would look for a term like nanomedicine, and certainly CLINAM has leveraged that very well. From a regulatory point of view, however, it's a little bit different. Specifically, as you know, FDA and Catherine Tyner has pointed it out in her discussions and presentations, as well as from the analytical point, Anil has referenced that as well. We do not categorize products specifically as nanomedicine. We analyze product to the extent of its composition and physical chemical characteristics, and if it contains nanotechnology, nanomaterial, then of course we need to have the expertise to understand it and assess risk benefits in its context, and that also requires to have appropriate methods, technologies and standards to communicate between we call it sponsors, industry submitting, or whoever submits a product for approval, as well as anyone who is involved to the stakeholders, so to facilitate a timely review of new technology, which in many cases it is. But we also use nanomaterial in traditional ways for just enhancing significantly the surface of a particular substance. So in our regulatory process, we don't distinguish nanomedicine. Those are products, they get reviewed by all the best review standards that we can apply, and with the best available science. But I would also like to ask my colleagues, because particularly in the European area, it may have a different meaning and a different implication. As such, I would invite maybe Marisa and Rapsimi to comment.
Well, we do not have a regular term as nanomedicine, of course. We just have a definition of a drug. So any medicine would fall under that regulation. However, nanomedicine is, like Frank suggested, gives sort of an understanding that there's a new technology involved, and brings a little more attention when reviewers are looking at the submission in front of them. So it's more of a tool rather than a definition, maybe a flag for now, but there will not be a special term for it in the regulations. I don't believe so.
Okay, thanks. I learn. The point is actually that I had a discussion these days with someone from pharmaceutical industry, from large pharma, big elephants, and they said, doubtless we have nanomedicines that could be declared as nanomedicines, but they aren't. For several reasons. One is the image, one is just the fact that they say we only see it as an enabling technology. It will be integrated, we will never use the word nano. And then when you look from the other side, you would say if Roche comes up with a product and you see that there's nanoparticles in use, that you would say, we the regulators make a constatation, and then all of a sudden you would probably have huge amounts of nanomedicines, and you could show that there is a market. So what do you say to that?
Well, we have plenty of nanomedicines, nanosimilars. We have lots of terms used in this direction because the field is so vast and so young that how do you communicate to the outside planet that you are working on dendrimers, on liposomal formulation, on carriers, on this, on that, and that. So nanomedicines and nanosimilars was to trigger in the common fantasy the idea of something new, on something which plays on the size and property related to the size, not only the chemistry, so not only the physical part. So this was something, is something really new. Of course, it's an enabling technology, and my mention of the DNA recombinant is not by chance, because I can figure out, maybe we call N-tech, nanotech, N-tech-based products, like rDNA-based products. And likewise with the other colleagues around the table, we don't see, for what we see today, what comes to us today, so looking at the products we are exposed to, we were ready in 2009, but we can confirm this today, we do not see any problem with the current paradigm of benefit-risk and quality, safety, and efficacy. We don't need anything else. We have the risk management plan, we have everything we need to deal with the nanomedicines we see today. However, as was mentioned by Robert and by Frank, we need to have the competencies. Because when you have medicines or things in between which have the need of being characterized with novel methodologies, we as regulator, we need to know who are the experts, we need to learn, and we need to evaluate the results of those methods. So there is a lot of work for us. So this is an emerging area, and we need really to put certain umbrella terms, because of course a polymer used for coating is different from a polymer which is a gel. A passive or activable polymer are two different beasts, are completely different beasts. And this we know, but how do you raise the attention, the funding, the conversation with the public. And this is the role which in the past years the term nano for us did have. In our internal database, product specific, we never have the term, never, nanomedicine. We use it, the terminology which is proper for liposomal formulation, for delivery system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the terminology, even in the regulatory arena, has to be tailored to what you want to do with it. So for drug evaluation is one story. For communication and a broad audience is another story. I don't know how long nanomedicine will last. As soon as we start having more nanomedicines approved, which have a specific delineation and the new technology emerges, maybe we call it N-tech, high-tech, N-tech products, not anymore nano.
Thank you. There was a question there. Ah, okay. Okay.
It's an important question, and I push the button if you open it. Thank you. Beat, I think it's also a question what you want to accomplish, and that's really the point here. I mean, think of blood and blood-derived product, or the category of biologics, right? If you really think about the detailed products that are blood-derived products, there are many different, if you want to call it categories, and yet they are under the umbrella, and in our cases for regulatory purposes, because it's derived from donors, in many cases purified, fractionated, treated in certain ways, and as such there's a certain expertise required, and there's a certain group of people who need to communicate about it. And I think as CLINAM has demonstrated over the past decade, and I think also will continue as a critical platform to bring those experts in the area together to communicate about the opportunities and the challenges and have constructive discussion to solve problems together. As such a term can be a uniting a platform, an umbrella to do that very well, and everyone understands what falls into it, even though there can be very different elements to it. So that's just one more thought on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm. Oh no, sorry, you've been first.
First of all, thank you for the very interesting talks. In the world of GMP manufacturing, we have a quality control called visual inspection. We control for visible particulate matter. And nanotechnology products are mostly classified as difficult to inspect products because of their intrinsic opalescence or turbidity. Is there a draft guideline or an update plan for an existing guideline which is specifically focusing on these problematics?
I have to check. So that is specific for nanotechnology-based product. You are asking whether GMP inspectors have drawn some recommendations in order to address these issues. I don't think so, but I will double check as soon as I can connect and come back to you between today and tomorrow. But I will pass the message though, okay? You can write an email and I will address in writing your question.
Okay, so one last question.
Yeah, I would like to come back to the really limitations maybe, and we can only regulate risks and safety. No? These are the two things, the questions. And coming to the management of innovation, what Marisa was mentioning. And specifically when we see an interoperability of different enabling technologies now, including nanotechnology, I'm wondering whether it is possible to regulate, or whether it's a better way to say, to choose management of innovation, management of enabling technologies as such. Because I doubt it is possible to separate in the future so much. And also understanding the really individualized responses and to nanotechnology.
Thank you. That's a difficult one. Any ideas?
Well, I think integrated technology is something we experience every day. I mean, think of your personal device. It does many different things at once. It's a phone, it's a camera, it's a receiver for many things. And of course, we can leverage it for many different purposes and functions if we just make it suitable for it. And I think with the new products and new medicine and new technology, it's the same. So I think it's always a pragmatic question as to where we focus and what is the problem that we want to solve and in what context. So I don't know if I did hear completely the question that was related to it, but I think for the purpose of solving problems, we have to be pragmatic and find terminology and definitions that describe best what we are aiming for or what we are doing so that we can communicate effectively among colleagues and to the public. And there will be iterations to it, and it's an evolution as our language evolves as well. And, you know, to one, something means one thing, and to another it means a little bit a different thing. So for that, there are consensus definitions and standards in definitions as well. I think that can be addressed, but I would address the question in a specific context, if that's possible.
I add a couple of things. Actually, in the discussions we had today in the group, in the regulators' closed lunch, we all agreed that we don't want to regulate. We don't want to regulate everything. What we want to do is to ensure quality, safety, and efficacy. And that's it. And until enough knowledge is accumulated, we don't want to use any generalization. For example, if you look in the area of nanomedicine and medicines, we have a lot of reflection paper and very few guidelines, because still is not solid enough to generalize findings of one product to another. So I think this is a clear signal that as regulators, we don't want to strangle innovation, but when a new product comes in, it should be a consistent production, should ensure availability to those who are in need. So we have to have an adequate scale, we have to have a consistency of the production, batch to batch. We need to have safe products, which can confirm, depend on quality-related issues, so quality-related safety, and then safety on its own as a product, and then efficacy. And this, I think, can put together many different technologies, in particular digital technology, because now it's clear that the knowledge of the drug starts with an approval. It's not finished with an approval. So then you can think of all sorts of integration for personalized medicine, for example. You can have a nano carrier which contains a sensor which stimulates an electrode which is implanted in the brain. And then you have the circuit of appetite being stopped. You see? So all sorts of things. I'm thinking about my regimen before the summer. Yeah.
So thank you very much. I think we need to stop now because our time is over already for 5 minutes. Thank you for the regulatory update, and thank you for the audience for the questions.